let's jump in and let me give you a couple of quick rudiment-like things you can practice slow to fast to slow to get your fop together. Yeah, buddy. Welcome to the 80/20 Drummer, the channel that asks the question, what could you be doing right now instead of wasting another day working your way through stick control? So I thought I would finally circle back around to something that I visited in a couple videos last year and something that I'm currently working on for my course, the 80/20 Drummer coaching course. More about that later in the show, which is how to play brushes. There's such a wide gap between the players who really play brushes well and the sort of books and resources that are written about it. What we're really trying to combat with this is two problems. Number one is ostinato fatigue, and I see this at the Smalls Jam session all the time. I'll see a young group of well-meaning players in their 35th chorus of So that's problem number one, is just what do you do to change up your textures and change up your phrasing as if you were playing with sticks. And problem number two is that if you listen back to the recording, if you actually really quantize things, a lot of times this stalwart 2 and 4 on the hi-hat isn't even really locking up with things very well. So today I'm going to tackle medium up tempo, and I'm using as an anchor half note equals 136, which is a tempo that's especially challenging because it's just slow enough that the eighths can still be swung, but it's definitely in the kind of up tempo range. Okay, so I'm going to be showing you some little hacks to open up your phrasing, and those are going to double as ways to check that what you're playing is clean. Because again, if you're playing this, you want to make sure that that hi-hat is really occurring on beats 2 and 4 and that there's not any kind of weird lag with it. You don't want to be putting too much pressure with the left hand. There are just a lot of things to think about. So I thought I would start you guys out with some basic chops, because one of the most misunderstood sounds with the brushes that all the pros do well and that it seems like none of the amateurs do well is the difference between an accent and an unaccented stroke. So you have dudes playing along and you'll see them like use their whole arm weight to try to emphasize that accent, but they're really not playing up the difference between the unaccented strokes and the accented strokes. So first, we're going to introduce you to a sound called the fop. And I think this comes from Ed Soph, who, by the way, is like one of my biggest influences when it comes to teaching brushes. So the fop is just, it's planting the whole brush with an accent and leaving it on the head. And you want to practice this louder and more percussively than you're going to need to do it, because in context, you're going to take something off of the top of that, and you want to be able to do it relaxed. So let's jump in and let me give you a couple of quick rudiment-like things you can practice slow to fast to slow to get your fop together. And the first is simply accented triplets. So that will sound like this. Okay, so what exactly is happening? You're playing the downbeats with a fop on the right hand and the left hand, and you're using that triplet to reverse your hands. And then in between, you're just doing a shimmy, shimmy. So it'll be fop, shimmy, shimmy, fop, shimmy, shimmy, fop, shimmy, shimmy, fop, shimmy, shimmy. So just practice that, slow to fast to slow. And what you're listening for is to make sure those fops are consistent. In particular, if you play traditional grip with the left hand, this is going to be more of an obstacle to overcome because the angle is going to be slightly different. So this is how you get that dialed in. So that skill is going to be immediately applicable if you're playing any kind of medium or medium up thing. And in fact, there's a beat that uses pretty much only this movement, which is like... More on that later. I'll show you that whole thing later, and I'll show it to you more slowly. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to, Alan Dawson style, add a drag preceding each accented stroke. So instead of, it's going to be, and faster that'll look like this. And again, you're listening for these strokes to be a consistent and low volume, and these to be a higher volume. And when you're actually sitting over the drum, you'll know if you nailed it or not. Because it's like a brush rim shot. All parts of the brush kind of have to touch the drum at the same time. So if you don't quite nail it, and again, the left hand's the bitch about it, then you'll know. So let's add the feet to that calculation. So instead of, let's just alternate with our feet, because I like to incorporate the feet as quickly as possible, because otherwise it's kind of academic. You have these guys who have great pad chops and go, but then they try to play a beat and it's because they haven't practiced their feet together. So let's incorporate them. That'll sound like this. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now let's revisit that swung beat using just this sort of back and forth hand-to-hand motion. And I'm going to try to think of, there are a few ways you can do it and a few places you can put the accents, but I'll try to figure out one that works well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and if you want a crash course into all of these sort of motions, these are all of the sort of very basic brush rudiments. You can check out my videos, How to Really Play Jazz Brushes, parts 1 and 2. And I get into it in even greater depth in the 80/20 Drummer Coaching course, which is like 6 months of lessons with me for about the price of a single lesson. Again, more information on that at the end of this video. Okay, so we're going along. So how do we get from there to up-tempo jazz playing? So believe it or not, we've already practiced all 3 of the requisite skills for up-tempo jazz playing. We've practiced the side to side, because when you're playing up-tempo, it's not a big circle you're making with your hand, it's just a side. So you got that together. You've practiced those strokes, and you've practiced your fop strokes. So now let me show you a couple idioms that you'll actually encounter when you play up-tempo jazz. Okay, so that's an example of something that you might play at this kind of intermediate halfway swung, halfway straight tempo. Again, the sweet spot for which is half note equals 136. And I want to give a shout out to the guy who inspired me to start practicing stuff at this tempo, because he's absolutely a ninja. That's Jordan Young, my boy Jordan, who just graduated from Juilliard. That's actually the correct technical pronunciation, in case anyone's wondering. And Jordan's inspired by another drum hero of mine, Mr. Billy Drummond. And Billy is also absolutely a ninja at this stuff. So let's talk about why it's not such a tall order to play something like what I played at the intro to this section of the lesson. And to get into that, I'm going to do a deconstructive process, starting at what I was playing and simplifying it down to something that I call the minimum effective beat. And I'm going to explain by demonstrating. So let's start out with, and I'm going to slow it down a little bit below what you would play it at performance tempo. But let's start out with some kind of idiomatic loop for swung up-tempo jazz, which might be just 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so if we cut out all of the extraneousness and just focus on the accented strokes, where something's going to peak an EQ meter. So that means we're getting rid of all the connective tissue and we're just looking at the accents. So that same idiom would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so one little part of this you may have a little bit of trouble with is this. And I recommend revisiting an exercise that's in my How to Really Play Jazz Brushes Part 2, which is the paradiddle, the inverted paradiddle, which is just this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Except that in this case, we're going to exaggerate the accents for those fops. So it'll be like this. You noticed as I played it, it got cleaner toward the end. So what did we just do? We just did one of the meta processes that's so important to actually getting better as a drummer on your own and developing your own voice that's you're not going to find in any drum book, which is we took something we wanted to play and we double simplified it. So we started out with something like... And then we simplified it down by taking out all the skip notes so that we just had the accents that would peak the EQ meter. 3, 4. And then we realized within that construction, we had a movement that was awkward to us, this. So we invented a rudiment to help us practice it, which is this. Now let's run that process in reverse, and I'll try to keep the tempo consistent. I'll play those paradiddles, and then I'll get back to our simplified lick, and then I'll go back into adding the connective tissue there. So let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's hypothetically how you might do that with one idiom. And let me do it with one more for you, but I'll speed up the process a little bit. So I'm just going to play around a little bit until I get a loop that I might want to play. Okay, let's do that one. So I think it's this. Okay, so step one, we take away all the connective tissue and only do the accents that would peak the EQ meter. And we're going to use this Ed-Sof construction as an abstraction for, so it would be, okay, so I learned two important things. One is that my left-handed fops aren't great, and the other is I can hear really intricately where that left foot's falling. And remember the problem from the beginning of the lesson, which was that the left foot wasn't even really in the right spot for all these dudes and their commitment to always playing it on 2 and 4. So if we simplify it that way, there's no way to not lock up, because any flaws are obvious. Okay, so let's pull one part out of that to focus on, and that's going to be. So I'm going to slow that down because I want my fop to really be great with this left hand. And you can tell this is obviously stuff I'm still working on myself. So. So let's go back to the original. Okay, so I think we've taken you through a good framework for how to get inside of playing up-tempo brushes and do the two things we talked about, which were number one, get away from the gravity of 2 and 4 and the ostinato, and number two, actually make those idioms clean or cleaner. So whether you've been on the list for a while and are interested in going deeper, or if you're brand new to the channel, I recommend a sort of gateway drug to the coaching course, which I call the 80-20 roadmap, which I'm going to put a handy graphic up right there. So the 80-20 roadmap jumpstarts you into the kind of 3 organizing principles that are throughout my lessons and throughout the course, which are that the difference between great drummers and average or mediocre drummers is not how fast can they play, how many chops do they have, how impressive are their solos, because there's a whole diaspora of great drummers. There are dudes who range from Johnny Vodakovich and Stanton Moore, all the way up to Tony Royster and Spanky. And all those guys have something in common that mediocre drummers don't. What are they? They're three things: playing cleanly, playing in time, and having good improvisational flow, what I call upload speed, which just means how do you trust what you're playing in the moment and don't have your brain hammering away at you, oh, I should be playing something fancier. So the roadmap is your gateway drug into those three concepts. It'll teach you how to identify the weaknesses in them in your own playing and start to give you some exercises for how to triage it. And it'll also give you more information about the coaching course, which is my sort of structured program, which is like 12 to 24 weeks long. Guys, I will get out of your hair. Hopefully this has helped you. I'm Nate. This is the 80/20 Drummer. Check me out. Talk to you soon. Peace. You can check out my videos, How to Really Play Brushes Parts 1 and 2. And you can check out my